good angle here. Oh,
Oh,
I got just a high school graduation picture of you, my friend. I got no live Tony Cabral.
why is that? I don't understand. What's going on?
Well, your volume's low again too. Can you crank that up for me a little bit?
Huh? What are you talking about?
Oh, that's low. Well, there you go.
All
Let me
right.
hear your volume. Speak and let me hear you.
Huh?
Oh, that'll work.
Will it work?
Be phenomenal or be forgotten. There's a cool story that goes to that T-shirt, but I forget what it was. You were at an event that was a speaker, right?
Well, one of the things that happened is I went to Boston, and when we waiting to get on the plane for JetBlue,
You want there?
I was wearing this shirt, and they said that the plane is totally full. It's going to be totally full. So if anybody wants to put their overall, overhead luggage through the regular thing, because we might not have enough room for everybody. So I put my thing into the plane. So they moved me up in the boarding queue because of that. So they went to first class first, and I was with the first person to go in after first class. And there was two, I want to say stewardesses, but it's not stewardesses anymore, whatever it's called.
Flight attendants.
Yeah. So the flight attendants, there was two of them blocking the aisle. They were looking back at the back of the plane. So I tapped one on the shoulder and said, "Hey, how about letting the passengers through, huh?" So one of them goes, "Hey, be phenomenal and be forgotten. What does that mean?" I says, "Well, if you're phenomenal, people remember you. If you're not, they don't remember you. They forget you." He goes, "What makes you so phenomenal?" I says, "Well, I make people laugh every day."
True.
So she goes, "Oh yeah, make me laugh." I says, "Well, I can make you laugh, but before I do that, I got to show you a picture of my pride and joy."
Right. We don't know each other well enough yet. Let's get to know ourselves a little bit. Let me share my pride and joy.
Yes, I showed the pride and joy, and they both laughed. They started laughing like crazy that they really loved it. So I said, "See, so now let me through and let me get my seat." So it's kind of funny, but anyway, on the way down there was a medical emergency in the plane. I think a guy was having a heart attack, and there was a doctor on the plane, so he's taking care of him. He had him out laid out on the aisle, and he's trying to help him. But then they went to Jacksonville, and they said they have to stop at Jacksonville to get what do you call it, an ambulance to come get this guy taken to the hospital.
Yep.
So when you're there, you can't just go back on the line they have to make sure that you have enough gas, and you have to get in the queue of the place. So we were there for over an hour, sitting there waiting to get back on the thing. So then after a while, the speakers on the speaker says, "Will the passenger that carries a picture of his pride and joy in his wallet please press the attendant button?" I said, "What the heck?" So I hit the button, and the stewardess comes over. She goes, "Hey, there's a guy back there that thinks he's really funny, but he's not. He's really frustrating the heck out of me. Can I show him a picture of your pride and joy?" I said, "Sure." So I give her my wallet. She goes over and shows.
Give her my wallet.
Yeah, so she goes over and she's showing it to him, but because there's no the engines weren't working, you could hear everything. About 3 or 4 rows behind me, there's a lot of laughter because of that. So she comes over, she goes, "Thank you so much." I said, "Okay, that's cool." So now people next to me saying, "What was that about?" I says, "Well, she wanted to show this guy the picture of my pride and joy." "What's that?" So I had to show it to them and stuff. It was funny.
The whole plane is passing your wallet around.
No, Hissy
Yeah,
fits in.
I look at this one. This is nice. It's not brand appropriate.
That's okay.
I like two things about this mug. I like the size. I like a larger mug.
Me
And I
too.
like the colors and the design. Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt your breakfast.
So the thing I don't like about these cups is that they're too small. They're only like 10 ounces.
Speaking of breakfast, we have a guest here in the house,
Do we?
who may or may not make an appearance. But Joe and I, JD and I, grew up together. We met in fifth grade, and somewhere in high school, I got a job at this restaurant. Port Washington, New York. JD Bullets. This is a little establishment. And I wanted the job there so bad, and I finally got a job like in 10th grade, and I was a busboy. And when I was in 10th grade, I was an October baby, so I was young anyway. So let me think. In 10th grade, I was probably 15. Or I turned 15. Yeah, I could have been 14 to start. 15 years old. When I was 15, I looked like I was 10. And I got a job in this restaurant, which is a very 30-something hangout for all the adults. You know, of course, when you're 15, 30-year-olds are like, might as well be 70. And all the wait staff was 30s, and I was just adopted by all these waitresses and all the bartenders. They just loved me because I was like everybody's little brother, you know. And I love to work. I love to work. New York's a different place in terms of, you know, bar hours, open till 3 a.m. So this had a really big business, dinner business, and kind of basic American grill type of menu today, but really nice and a great bar atmosphere, hangout. Of course, I'm 15, so it feels cool to be hanging out with all this, but I'm working. So I would work on a Friday night and a Saturday night from 5 until 3 a.m. and then walk home. I mean, it was a different time, you know. I mean, now our parents have, you know, going everywhere, taking kids everywhere, mom's taxi. That didn't happen in the 70s. You know, we lived over a mile from the restaurant. So it's 3 a.m. I'm punching out. And unless I get a ride with a waitress or a waiter, I'm walking a mile home in the middle of the night. And I loved every second of it. So I ended up working into the kitchen and helping prep for some of the food. And then I started working on Sunday brunch, and I got pretty decent at making omelets, you know. And so then with the friends out at night, and we come home from clubs or bars or whatever, and it's 2 a.m. and we're at somebody's house's kitchen, and I'm making omelets for everybody in the middle of the night. So I got known for this. And so Lynn and Joe this morning are waiting for omelets after our podcast, which I'll be preparing nicely. So Joe and I did something cool last night. So of course, this is Joe from JD and the Retro Riders, who love all their music. He is the biggest Beatles fan I know, which is why you called him that day. And we talked on the phone, and you told him the Paul Nuno story. Right? Amazing. And so he called me a few weeks ago, and he goes, there's this guy named Jim Irsay, Irsay. And Jim Irsay is this billionaire who owns the Indianapolis Colts football team. He also owns one of the largest, if there's anybody any larger, no one knows about it, the largest collection of Beatles stuff, memorabilia, equipment, instruments. And what he does, which everyone's really appreciative of, is he puts them on display, like a convention display, so you can see them. Most of the stuff is just in storage lockers and no one knows about it. So he also is a singer, and he's a billionaire, so he pays top musicians and they build the band. So Joe sends me this link to this thing at the Boston Garden last night, the Jim Irsay collection, JIC, and live music.
Wow.
So Jim Irsay is kind of he'll sit in this chair. I guess he's an older guy, and he'll sing this very raspy blues voice. So the band last night was Kenny Aronoff on drums, who's like a studio god. Kenny Wayne Shepherd was on guitar. Wow. Peter Wolf from Jay Giles was there singing. Mike Mars from REM, bass player.
Wow.
It was almost like Ringo and his all-star band. Like all these guys played all their stuff, and so the place opened at 6. And in any arena, it's not just the Bank Garden or the Boston Garden. You're walking around the hallway around it, and they had these huge displays, like plexiglass bolted to the floor, security. And Joe in particular had to see this one, I think it was a Gibson SG guitar, you would know, from George Harrison that he played on Paperback Writer on. Joe's never seen it.
Wow.
He just actually posted on Facebook, so you'll see it. And guitar, not just Beatles stuff, but there were guitars and basses. He had a Beatles drum set with, Ringo's drum set with the picture behind them of the band with Ringo playing that drum set. He also has like original Declaration of Independence. It was crazy cool. And on top of all this, the tickets were free. No charge. just reserve tickets, get in line, and get in there. And go. It was crowded. I was a little surprised by how many people because it wasn't just walk in for free. You had to register for tickets for free. So they knew how many tickets went out, but it was too. We were on line for the guitars. Joe said, "Let's get the guitars done first." And we're probably in line to get. You could see them, but to get in line and get in front and get a couple of minutes to take the pictures, it was an hour. So and also it was hot, man. It's been crazy hot in Boston. So AC was either not working or struggling or they didn't care. I don't know, but it was fun. But after the guitars, we were like, man, you just had a bucket list item. I mean, he goes, bucket list. I could die right now. This is great. And so we were quite frankly, we weren't that psyched up about the music, but let's go see what's going on. So we went in, we sat in the thing. The place was just about full. I mean, not the top rafters, but there were probably 8,000 people. And they started about 8:15, and they opened up with Warren Zevon, Lawyers, Guns, and Money. And then they went into a couple of just covery stuff because they'll have all these bands up there. There's a Bob Dylan tune that he sang really well. And then I think he left the stage, and Kenny Wayne Shepherd did a few of his tunes, and then a cover blues song. And of course, there's 20 people on stage. They got 4 female backup singers. They got a horn section. Kenny Aronoff is a monster on drums. He's a studio. Everybody, in the mix knows who this guy is. And he really just held it down, the whole thing. It was amazing. And so we didn't stay. We stayed for 5 or 6 tunes and left at about 9. We were just beat, but we'd seen what we needed to see. It was a cool thing. So this is also on tour. So it's called the Jim Irsay Collection, JIC, and it tours the country.
So
and
he hires these musicians, but he doesn't even charge you to go to see the show. That's awesome.
Yeah, free music, free looking at all this memorabilia. I mean, I think that probably, certainly rich people get a bad rap because they're rich and everyone's jealous, right? So this guy's a billionaire, but the feedback I was hearing is like everyone's so appreciative that he puts his stuff on display so the public can see it. And I'm like, and on top of all that and the expense of everything, he doesn't even, I mean, anybody would have paid 30 or 40 bucks to go to this, times 8,000 people, just to cover the cost. Like, we were talking about what he had to pay these musicians. And I said, Kenny Aronoff is one of the top drummers in the world in terms of for hire. I mean, what do you think he made tonight, Joe? I said, $5,000, $10,000. And Joe's like, probably 50 or 100. I'm like, oh my God. And then you multiply that by all the musicians on stage. Like, you're going to call up Kenny Wayne Shepherd and say, can I buy you for a night? What's that going to, plus rehearsals, free. Amazing.
So I told you I went to see Kenny Wayne Shepherd 3 months ago over here in Clearwater. Awesome show. Awesome.
It was funny for me, and there's an extreme, we've got an extreme connection. So Gary Sharon, when he joined Van Halen, 97, 98, right? Because they put out Van Halen 3 with Gary on vocals, the only album they did together. I think that was 98. And I still firmly believe, because it didn't really go anywhere, and it was it didn't work. But I've always believed, because I think some of that music's amazing. The problem, I believe, with that album was that they called it Van Halen. And the audience base just couldn't embrace it. If it did something else, because there's some cool music on there. And I saw the tour, the only last time, but up until that time, I saw Van Halen tour at the Boston Garden with Gary on vocals. And it was fun because it looked like he and Eddie really had a real nice friendship, because they sat down on this amplifier halfway through and kind of just, and Eddie says, how do you like our new singer? And of course, Gary's their hometown kid. This is Boston. He goes, how do you like my new band? And the place goes crazy. It was fun. But the interesting thing about that night was that the Kenny Wayne Shepherd band opened up for Van Halen. And his first album came with Blue on Black. That came out in 98.
Wow.
So no one really knows who this guy is. They came out, they blew everybody away. So they're walking off stage and the applause was insane for Kenny Wayne Shepherd. And of course, people are psyched about Van Halen. Everyone's in a great mood. And the band stopped, like they were in awe. And they just turned and bowed, and they couldn't believe how embraced they were by the audience. And here I am last night in the same arena, similar area, seeing Kenny Wayne Shepherd 25 years later.
There's a video of him on YouTube doing Voodoo Child, Jimi Hendrix thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty impressive. I've got to be honest with you. It's really, really good.
Wow. And wasn't it you who shared with me the video of that heavier band Five Finger Death Punch doing Blue on Black?
Yeah, yeah.
And that video, which was cool. I mean, I don't love that band, but I appreciate what they're doing in that kind of genre, and I kind of like that genre because they definitely took that song and they kind of hard rocked it a little bit.
So I'd forgotten that you and Joe knew each other in New York, not in Massachusetts.
Say that again?
You and Joe were friends in New York, not in Massachusetts.
Correct. We grew up. We met in fifth grade. We met in fifth grade in New York.
I'd forgotten
He's been
that.
in California for 35 years, but we see each other all the time. And I've been up here for 35 or 40 years. You've been in California how long? So forget 30 years. You moved there in 86. 37 years. Because you've been in Florida for how long? 8 or 10 years in Florida?
Yeah, 32 years.
32. I don't know what happened to time. Good Lord.
So
Looks like I was visiting you on your little cul-de-sac in Leominster like 6 years ago. What was the name of that street?
my street?
Your street in Leominster.
Barnes,
You remember?
Barnes Street.
Oh, that's 20? Was it 20?
29 Barnes, yeah.
Barnes Street. I'll have to swing by there sometime and take a picture and send it to you of the house.
So Joe might not know the story about me learning, not learning, but listening to the Beatles in the Azores as a kid.
Huh.
So
So you were 10 or 11 when you left, right? The Azores?
I was 10 when I came over, yeah.
And what year was that?
67.
Oh my God. So the Beatles were like right in the middle of crazy mania. So you remember listening in the Azores?
Yeah, so we didn't speak a word of English, right? So we
Right.
sing along with the songs as much as we could, trying to imitate what they're saying. And then I came to America, and there was a song I used to listen to all the time, the Beatles on the radio over there in the Azores. And then I come to America, and in about a year or so or whatever, I spoke English now,
Right.
And there's a song from the Beatles called "Yellow Submarine."
Yes. I mean, everybody watching knows that one.
And that was a song that I was singing along with them on the
But
radio.
didn't know what you were singing.
All of a sudden, I'm singing along with them, and I'm understanding what the lyrics are, and I'm like, "What the heck kind of stupid shit is this?" It just didn't make any sense to me. I was like, "What the heck?"
So you sang it not knowing what it was, and then you learned English and realized what you were singing. You're like, this doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't make any sense. Yeah, we all live in a yellow submarine.
I can mess up a kid trying to learn English. That can't be right.
If you're right, yeah.
That is a funny story. But we do that like songs that I'm growing up with. Sometimes there's a little like behind chorus in a different language. I can't come up with anything off the top of my head right now, but we sing along with that too in a different language. I don't know what it is when you try to get as close as you can.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
So I don't know, is Joe listening to what you're saying?
So he's not. So here's what's going on currently is Wimbledon is happening live as we speak.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And Joe's a huge tennis fan. And it's funny because as a kid, he's been a tennis fan his whole life. His parents played and he played, and I didn't get it. I remember him being at my house one day, my parents' house. I'm growing up. I don't know, I could probably check the year, and it was Wimbledon and my mom was watching. Like, what is this? And my mom and Joe were talking about, and I remember Arthur Ashe was playing, and I'm not sure if it was finals or what bracketing it was, but I remember that so specifically because I felt so out of the loop, and my friend was talking to my mom and had a similar interest. And I'm like, well, that's weird too, because we're kids,
Yeah.
I remember that. He's been a tennis fan forever. So he's got his laptop hooked up to the big screen TV. He's watching the Wimbledon final as we speak, which is a really young guy and an old veteran, and see what happens. But he'll watch this. So anything you're about to say for him, he'll hear.
Well, that's okay. I was going to say something, but if he's not listening, I won't do it. But I told you several times about my friend Steve, who's a musician, real good musician, keyboard player.
Yeah.
And he always sends me real nice messages about, the podcast. He says, "Man, you guys are
That's nice.
so natural. It's like you guys just having a conversation and just it comes out real cool." So anyway,
We've had some practice.
He said, he sent me a thing, said, hey, you guys were talking about the Lenny's restaurant, and all of a sudden you went off. So what happened? I says, well, it was takeout. And he said, yeah, it was takeout.
You know what's funny? I know Ron is laughing at this right now because Ron texted me 2 episodes ago. He said, "You guys actually finished on your own terms, and Zoom didn't cut you off." And so Joe and I were talking last night out on the patio, and he's curious about like, how do you guys do this? Do you have an agenda? And I go, no, we just say good morning and start.
Yeah, yeah.
And I remembered that last week, I forgot what it was, but I remembered that last week I was about to tell a new story. We were talking music and being exposed to new music, and I talked about the breakfast place in Clearwater. So the story is at that breakfast, and you've probably forgotten this too. You told me about an album on my phone that I think everybody needs to know exists. And we discussed it over breakfast at that place. And so it was the Carlos Santana album when he does all the covers, Guitar Heaven.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Right? Let me just show you what, not you, but show the gang here, the viewers, what that looks like. The cover of the under Santana. Pardon me for not knowing the alphabet. Only one cup of coffee so far. Boom. Here it is right here. Guitar Heaven, the greatest guitar classics of all time. Carlos Santana is doing them. This is a cool album. I'm so thrilled that you told me about this. Whole Lot of Love with Chris Cornell on vocals. And there's all sorts of stuff like that. The album is really worth checking into.
And the thing is, with Santana, when he's doing the leads of the songs, I mean, it's if you're a Santana fan, you can tell it's him right away. It's just amazing.
Oh, totally. So he takes all these classic rock songs, adds his finesse on guitar, and he's got a guest vocalist. Like, it's cool stuff. It's worth checking out.
The only thing I don't like about Santana, to be honest with you, is that when he put that album together, he didn't even call me to go in there and play some stuff with him.
Yeah, because you could have either played guitar or sang.
Boom.
I remember that. It's so funny. Like that feels like 2 years ago, but let's call it 5. And it's funny because 10,000 things happened that day, but you remember specific things like that breakfast. I can remember that story.
Yeah, yeah.
And I remember why I was down there. I was taking my dad. Oh my God, what a beautiful story. But my sweet dad had never stepped foot in Florida. He'd been in the United States since 1949, off the boat from Ireland. And he always wanted to go to Florida. And he had an aunt who lived in Florida who loaned him the money to get on the boat in Ireland and get over here, $60. And he paid her back, Aunt Nora. And he always wanted to go. And for some reason, my mom was always like, we're not going to Florida. It's not going to happen. And he's like, well, how about like for a week vacation? She's like, no, I don't know why. But this is the story I heard after she was gone. He's telling. So, and then I found out it was a weird thing. It was all supposed to happen. But this woman called me from Sacramento, California, Robin, saying, hey, I'm your cousin. And second cousin, I'm going to Ireland and I'd love to connect with some relatives. And so I connected her with my Aunt Emily, my dad's youngest sister. And then we got friendly, visited her when I was out there. And there was an aunt of hers, my dad's cousin, was having a 90th birthday party in Apollo Beach, Florida, south of Tampa on the coast.
Yeah.
And I thought, I got to take my dad to this. So we did. Long story short, I bought tickets. We flew to Florida together. And we stayed at a little Airbnb. We attended this. Oh, this was such a sweet thing because when my parents moved down here from New Hampshire and moved in with me for the last handful of years of their lives, landlines went away. They didn't have a cell phone. I didn't know who people were. No one knew how to get in touch with me. And everybody thought that everybody died, right? So we're in this house for this party. There had to be 50, 60 people at this party. And my entire life growing up, I just heard my mom and dad talk about 2 names, Gloria Marlowe and Kathleen Pfeiffer. These are my dad's 2 first cousins, separate families. My grandmother was one of 13, so there were lots of kids, my dad's generation. He's got hundreds of cousins, and these are the only 2 names I ever heard. And they just adored each other, And so we're at this party, and Kathleen was thrilled. It was her 90th, and Gloria Marlowe, who lives in Western Massachusetts, was there with her family, her daughter. And she walks up to my dad, like she's seeing a ghost because she didn't know he was alive. And so I got some beautiful pictures of the three of them together. We had a great time. And during that time, he was sleeping in late one morning, and I called you and said, "Let's go to breakfast." And that's when that whole thing happened in Clearwater.
Wow.
Beautiful.
So Apollo Beach, uh, when people come down to Florida to visit, I take them to Apollo Beach on purpose because there's a place over there. It's like a Tampa Electric power plant, right?
Yeah.
So what they do is they bring the water in from the Gulf to cool the engines, and then it goes back
Oh,
up, right? So the manatees love it when the water was warm like that in the winter. So they go there, and you can go there, and they have all these things that are like you can sit on this boardwalk so you can see it, and the manatees are coming up, just sitting there like around. It's so cool to watch. So every time I take people there, they always love it.
wow. So, and there's a cool, it's a hotel. I can picture this now. And it's like a one-story hotel. You walk through to the back, and along the beach, there's like a little tiki lounge, tiki bar. You know what I'm talking about? I want to go back to this place. I'm scrolling through to try to find some pictures because I love to find some of these. And my dad and I just have this beautiful memory of sitting at this little tiki thing, and the sun is setting, and it's Florida. So what they do there at the outdoor bars, they have this little misting that goes on that just drops mist onto you to keep you comfortable because you're at the beach and it's hot and it's spectacular. And we met this couple there. Oh, that was so sweet. Lori Loftus and her husband Tom. And she's like, "God, your dad reminds me of a man I took care of until he died." And there's a picture of the two of them. It was just one of those fun days. And but you'll never forget, beautiful stuff. We find those. I'll come up with them, maybe for next time. But that's how we got cut off. Oh, found it. So here's my dad and Gloria and Kathleen Pfeiffer at this party.
Wow,
So this is in Apollo City, and that's Gloria looking at my dad, and sweet,
that's awesome.
sweet, sweet, sweet. That's so gosh, let me show you this. I wonder if I can find the name of that. There's my cousin. I met some people there who are my second cousins, and we've been in touch ever since. It was spectacular. Oh yeah. So we're at this tiki bar, and here's this Lori and my dad.
Wow.
So fun. And so that's that little tiki thing. Oh, it's called Bahia Beach, Bahia. It
Yeah,
says
yeah,
Ruskin. That might be the town, Ruskin.
yeah, Bahia Beach. Yeah,
But
yeah.
that was sweet. There's Lori and Tom, my
Wow.
dad that day, and then I was just so psyched for my dad because we were sitting here having this beautiful, just a drink and an appetizer at this bar, and he'd never been to Florida. And I was able to kind of have him look at this sunset right over our shoulders as we're at this bar. And I'm like, it was a
Wow.
powerful moment for me to kind of be able to give that to him, and powerful, hopefully, for him to say, "This is cool." I hope.
So, my house is actually probably 300, 300 feet from the upper Tampa Bay. So there's a bay that separates Clearwater from Tampa, and that water is right around the street. So it's pretty cool. And then across the street from me is a place called Jack Willie's. It has like a tiki bar. So the water comes in there from the bay, and have the tiki bars there and stuff. And sometimes I go there, and it takes me 90 seconds to walk over there.
Yeah.
But the walk home takes about 15 minutes.
What's the difference?
Staggering.
The difference is staggering. That's one of my favorite jokes that you came up with. Beautiful. Oh,
Oh, so pretty cool. Pretty cool.
I'm looking out the window. It's July in New England, and it has been nothing but rain for feels like weeks. It is pouring right now. It's going to pour all day. It poured all July 4th weekend, and
So when you talk about Joe, do you call him Joe or JD?
I call him Joe. JD was something new that came up with the band.
I was watching the videos of his band last night. Man, there's some good stuff there. I really liked
Ah,
She's she's the one is really, really cool.
did you watch the music video for that?
Yeah, yeah.
So let me tell you about the cool thing about that music video, because he's a genius when it comes to marketing and all the social stuff. He went out to his fan base and said, "Send me pictures of women in your life." And everybody did. As you're watching that video, you got pictures of women kind of just like scrolling through in the background.
Yeah, yeah.
And so if you look closely, I sent him a picture of my sister because he grew up with my sister, he knows Betsy, and my daughter Jen is in there, and Lynn is in there, and then Joe's mom. And so you'll see these women's pictures floating through. And those are just people who sent pictures in of people who were important in their lives saying she's the one. It's a great song, too.
Yeah.
And he's got some really cool music videos that they did, the one out in the desert.
Yeah.
And then he has a bunch of live stuff, too. They're great live, man. They're tight, and people love them.
Yeah, those three ladies with the backing vocals, really good.
So here's a cool story. Those two women were both named Nicole, actually, and they do a lot of other gigs, like that's their life. And they were realizing where Joe was going with this band, and this commitment was going to increase for them. And they said, "We're just not the right people for you, so we have to leave." And Joe's like, "Okay, cool. Uh, who is going to replace her?" And they both said at the same time, "Allie." So they knew this girl named Allie. Joe met an audition and got it, and man, so she's taking the place of these two female singers, and now it's Allie, and she's got this so cool rock and roll vibe, and when you hear her, it's spectacular. So they're releasing a song next week called Forever Eyes, I think it is, and she is featured on that, and I haven't even heard it yet. I've seen some live stuff. She's got it's really cool.
Yeah.
Like everything happens for a reason. It's evolving, and it's really awesome.
Very nice, yeah.
So they're good, yeah.
Huh.
JD and the Retro Riders, for those of you watching at home, jdretroriders.com or YouTube. You can't miss them. They're out there. Very pop, Beatles, Tom Petty, Smashing Pumpkins kind of poppy, cool stuff.
But when you say Retro Riders, it's not, it's R-Y.
RYDERS.
The first time I was looking for it,
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. What's going on in Florida today? What's happening in this beautiful, is it a beautiful Sunday?
It always is.
Hence the 32 years or 30, how many?
32 years, yeah. That's crazy, isn't it?
So I have told you and kept you in the loop on my construction project outside with my porch. God, this is the most crazy, frustrating relief, all of it in there, but we're making huge progress. So we're pouring a concrete porch, which is just a concrete slab on grade, but there's red tape and the rigmarole and the city pushing back and engineers and permits. And then my builder calls me and I go, "Hey, what's up?" And he starts with, "I wish I had better news." I'm like, "Oh."
That's not a good way.
Finally, because we hired a structural engineer to put the plans together because that was important to pull the permit. So he calls me back and he goes, "They want another piece of paper signed by the engineer," which is basically the city washing their hands of the whole thing, saying the engineer owns everything. And it was another huge chunk of money. I'm like, this is ridiculous. So I called the engineer and he goes, "Well, here's why." And I go, "I totally get it." But he goes, "But go talk to that building inspector, go to the office." So I show up at the office the next day. And I'm talking to myself across the parking lot, going in. Be nice, smile, chill, don't be confrontational. And as I said that to myself, it's interesting how our mindset affects our behavior. Because as I had that conversation with myself, I realized I really am just going because I have a couple questions and I know less than everybody involved. So I finally get to this nice woman who is very helpful, who brought the computer up. And I said, "I don't even really know enough to ask my question, but there's another piece of paper we're being asked for, and I'm just, confusion on the titling of the property because it's listed as commercial, and they see this it's commercial. They go, this must be a big deal. I go, this is a 900 square foot house. This is as small as it gets." And so she goes, "This is concrete," and I go, "Yeah." She goes, "You don't need a permit for this," and she done all set. No permit. And I got back to my builder. I'm like, "Okay, so after everything is said and done, we don't need a permit after." And he can't believe it. So we got the documentation from the city. He's got the whole front area framed out. and they're pouring concrete this week.
Wow.
Yeah, which is fun. Big relief for me, but it sounds small on the scope of it. But to know what I've been through with this has been like, oh my God, it's just been a trial of patience and understanding. And now we're gonna have a porch. We got a roof over it, waiting. It's an L-shaped farmer's porch. So
Nice.
we're getting there.
How long is
By the
Joe
time we
staying?
record next weekend, the porch will be done. They're doing 2 separate pours. They'll both be done this week, weather permitting. And by the time you and I know Hissy fitted again, I should have a porch.
How long is Joe staying?
Joe's in town till tomorrow. Just in for the weekend. He's going to Chicago and Milwaukee for business on the way home.
Nice.
Yeah, it's always good to see him. Having a good time.
Crazy. Crazy,
Good
crazy.
stuff. Oh, and my friends Tom and Janice showed up yet. They live right near here. We're good buddies. And he has a 72 Corvette convertible that he's had since he was 18 years old. And he's our age. And his dream was to have it restored, which he finally did over the last 2 years. And to now picture a 72 Corvette convertible in ultra mint condition. It is spectacular. And he pulls into the driveway yesterday because they're dropping some flowers off for Lynn, like flowers for the garden for Lynn. Doing a flower swap. And Joe's a car guy, so they start talking. And Joe's got a gig next couple of weeks, first week in August. And there's this place south of him towards San Diego called the Coach House Grill, which is a big place. They're warming up for, you remember this band from the 70s, Pablo Cruz.
Oh, yeah.
Remember Pablo Cruz? So Joe's warming up for Pablo Cruz. And Tom says, what date is this? Because they're going on vacation. And he says, we're going to be in San Diego. So now Tom and Janice are talking about going to the JD Retro Riders gig with their daughters. They got 2 twin daughters who are 21-ish, beautiful, and nice family unit. And they're going to, I'm like, that's so funny. Everything happens.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, very, very cool.
Have you seen any extreme dates on this new tour with the album? Did it come to Florida yet?
No, no Florida.
Me either. And we have to revisit our Red Rocks story.
Yeah.
But you're doing bigger travel. You got any? Are you going to that wedding?
In
The
Portugal?
family wedding across the pond, across the sea?
Across the pond, yeah.
It's a big pond. Speaking of Atlantic Beach to across the Atlantic Ocean. So I knew you were thinking about that last time we talked. Are you still thinking? Are you planning or trying to figure it out?
Yeah, figure it out. It's
Nice.
be nice to do that.
That'd be a fun trip.
Yeah. Then
Fun.
my boys will be going too. So one comes from Norway, the other one goes from LA, and we get together. That's how we get to Virginia.
Norway. I bet Norway gets there first. That's probably the shortest trip, isn't it? Norway to there versus US.
Probably, yeah.
That's funny. Weird to think about.
Is that place called Norway or No Way?
Well, we have a wonderful opportunity ahead of us here in the next 60 seconds, which is to end our podcast on our terms, because I just looked at the clock and I got a feeling the Zoom's about to.
Yeah. So
what do you think?
we do it on our own.
It's our way or the highway. That's what I like to say.
Yeah, do a countdown from 10 to 0.
Of course, the problem here is we talk about this, and then it usually spurs on another thought, and we're off to another story, like having breakfast at that stupid place in Clearwater. All right, let's cut it. Pay attention, Ron. We're ending on our terms. Have a great weekend, buddy.
So say hi to Joe, man. I was hoping I would have been. I was hoping
he'll be anxious to watch this one. So
yeah.
all good.